Hey guys, tonight we journey back to a time when war wasn't just fought with weapons. It was fought with hunger, disease, exhaustion, and a kind of misery that slowly wore men down from the inside out. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine you are no longer in your comfortable room, but standing in a muddy field sometime in the 1860s. Your clothes are stiff with sweat and dirt. Your stomach hasn't felt full in days. And somewhere in the distance, the low rumble of artillery reminds you that at any moment, everything could end. You are now a soldier in the American Civil War. And nothing about this life is heroic, the way stories often make it seem. The day begins before the sun has even thought about rising. You wake not because you are rested, but because someone nearby is coughing loud, wet, and persistent. That sound has become as common as breathing. Around you, men shift in their thin blankets, many of them sleeping directly on the cold, uneven ground. If it rained the night before, which it often did, the earth beneath you is damp, and your bones ache from the chill that never quite leaves your body. There is no proper bed, no soft pillow, just whatever you could gather, maybe a rolled-up coat, if you're lucky. You sit up slowly, your joints stiff, your head heavy. The smell hits you almost immediately. It's a mixture of sweat, unwashed bodies, wet wool, and something worse, something sour and rotting. It lingers in the air because there is no real sanitation. Latrines are shallow and often too close to camp. Flies gather everywhere, buzzing lazily as if they too have grown tired of this place. Breakfast, if it can be called that, is hardly something to look forward to. A piece of hardtack, so dry and solid it feels more like biting into a rock than food. Sometimes it's crawling with tiny insects, but you learn not to complain. You tap it against something hard to knock the bugs loose, or simply eat it anyway. Hunger doesn't leave much room for dignity. If you're fortunate, there might be a bit of salted meat. But even that is often tough, overcooked, or starting to spoil. Fresh food is rare, vegetables even rarer. Your body begins to feel the absence of real nourishment long before you fully understand what's happening. Weakness creeps in quietly. Your energy fades. Cuts and bruises take longer to heal. Water is another constant problem. Clean water is almost a luxury. Many soldiers drink from nearby streams or rivers, not realizing, or perhaps not caring, that those same waters are contaminated. Upstream, there could be waste, dead animals, or worse. But thirst wins every time, and so illness spreads. It starts small, a stomach ache, a fever, maybe just fatigue. But soon, it becomes something more serious. Dysentery is common, turning what little strength you have into weakness. Men grow pale, gaunt, and exhausted. Some can barely stand. Others don't get back up at all. What's terrifying is how normal this becomes. Death is no longer shocking. It's expected. As the morning light finally stretches across the camp, orders are shouted. There's always something to do. Drill formations, marching practice, cleaning weapons, repairing equipment. Even when there's no battle, the work never truly stops. And yet, despite all this activity, there's an underlying sense of waiting, a quiet tension that sits in your chest, because sooner or later, you will be called into battle. Marching is perhaps one of the most draining parts of this life. Hours upon hours of walking, often with heavy gear pressing down on your shoulders. Your boots, if you even have proper ones, rub against your skin until blisters form. Some men wrap their feet in cloth to ease the pain, but it only helps so much. The roads are rarely kind. Dust rises in thick clouds when it's dry, coating your throat and making every breath feel heavy. When it rains, those same roads turn into thick mud that clings to your boots, making every step feel like a struggle. You don't march alone. Thousands of men move together, a slow, grinding mass of exhaustion. Conversations fade over time. At first, there might be jokes, stories, attempts to lift spirits. But as the hours drag on, silence takes over. Each man retreats into his own thoughts. Some think of home, a warm meal, a familiar face, a bed that doesn't leave you sore and aching. Others try not to think at all, because thinking leads to fear, and fear is always there, just beneath the surface. When the order finally comes to halt, it's not relief that you feel, not entirely, because stopping often means setting up camp again. More work, more discomfort, and always the possibility that this might be the place where battle finds you. Evenings are strange. There's a quiet that settles over everything, broken only by distant sounds or the occasional murmur of voices. Fires flicker weakly, casting long shadows. Men gather in small groups, sharing what little food they have, sometimes writing letters if they can. Letters are precious. You might spend what little free time you have trying to put your thoughts into words. But what do you say? Do you tell your family how miserable it truly is? Do you describe the sickness, the hunger, the constant fear? Or do you soften it, pretending that things are better than they are? Many choose the latter, not because they want to lie, but because they don't want to cause worry. As night deepens, the temperature drops. The same thin blanket that barely helped before is all you have again. You lie down, your body aching, your mind restless. Sleep doesn't come easily. There are too many sounds, too many thoughts, and sometimes there are cries. Not everyone survives the night. Illness takes its toll quietly, without the drama of battle. A man who seemed merely tired in the evening might be gone by morning. There are no grand speeches, no heroic final moments, just a slow fatting, often unnoticed until it's too late. You begin to understand something important, something unsettling. Most soldiers don't die in battle. They die like this, slowly, miserably, forgotten in the space between one day and the next. And yet, despite everything, the hunger, the sickness, the exhaustion you endure, not because you are fearless, but because you have no choice. There is a strange resilience that forms in this environment, a dull acceptance. This is your life now. This is what it means to be a soldier here. But the worst part, the part that truly breaks something inside you, hasn't even begun yet. Because all of this, every miserable detail, every aching moment, is just the prelude. The real horror comes when the waiting ends, and the sound of gunfire replaces the silence. The silence doesn't break all at once. It unravels slowly, like a thread being pulled loose. At first, it's just a distant sound, so faint you almost mistake it for something else. A dull thump somewhere far away. Then another, and another. It's not thunder. It doesn't roll or echo in the same way. It's sharper, more deliberate. Artillery. Men begin to notice. Conversations stop mid-sentence. Someone turns their head, listening more closely. Another man stands up, instinctively tightening his grip on his rifle. No one says it out loud at first, but everyone feels it. This is it. The waiting is over. Orders come quickly now, shouted across the camp with a sudden urgency that cuts through the lingering haze of exhaustion. There's no time to fully prepare, no time to mentally gather yourself. You move because everyone else is moving, because hesitation isn't really an option. Your hands feel strangely clumsy as you check your equipment. Rifle, ammunition, whatever small belongings you carry. Everything suddenly seems both too heavy and not enough at the same time. The air itself feels different, thicker, heavier, as the regiment begins to form, lines taking shape with uneven precision. The distant booms grow louder. You can hear the faint whistle of shells now, cutting through the sky before crashing somewhere unseen. Each impact sends a tremor through the ground, subtle but unmistakable. Someone nearby mutters a prayer. Another man tries to joke, his voice forced, thin. It doesn't land. No one laughs. Your heart begins to pound, not in a sudden rush, but in a steady, relentless rhythm. It feels too loud, like it might give you away somehow. You try to swallow, but your mouth is dry. Every instinct in your body is telling you to run, to get as far away from this as possible. But you don't move, because no one else does. The march toward the battlefield is different from any march you've done before. There's no idle talk now, no drifting thoughts. Every step feels deliberate, weighted. The sounds grow clearer with each passing moment, rifle fire crackling in uneven bursts, artillery pounding like a giant heartbeat in the distance. And then you smell it. Gunpowder. It mixes with the earth and the faint, metallic hint of something else, something you don't immediately recognize, but will soon come to know all too well. As you crest a small rise, the scene reveals itself. Smoke hangs low over the field, thick and shifting, obscuring parts of the landscape. Through it, you can see movement, lines of men, flashes of light as rifles fire, the chaotic motion of something far larger than any single person. This isn't a clean, orderly engagement. It's confusion, noise, fear. The order comes, sharp and unmistakable. Forward. Your legs move before your mind can catch up. The line advances, uneven but steady. Each step feels surreal, like you're watching yourself from a distance. The ground beneath your feet is uneven, churned by previous movements, dotted with debris. And then the bullets start to come close. At first, it's just a sound, a sharp crack as one passes somewhere nearby. Then another, closer this time. You hear the unmistakable whiz as one cuts through the air, too fast to see, too close for comfort. Someone cries out. You don't know who. You don't look, because looking means acknowledging what's happening. And you're not ready for that yet. The line halts. Orders are shouted again, barely audible over the growing chaos. You raise your rifle, your hands trembling despite your efforts to steady them. The motions you practiced so many times now feel foreign, almost mechanical. Load, aim, fire. The recoil jolts through your shoulder, sharper than you remember. Smoke bursts from the barrel, briefly obscuring your vision. You don't know if you hit anything. You don't have time to think about it. Reload. The process feels slower now. Your fingers struggling with tasks that once seemed simple. Around you, the same motions repeat over and over. Men loading, firing, shouting, some moving forward, others falling back. And then, suddenly, it becomes real. A man beside you collapses. One moment he's there, breathing, moving like everyone else. The next, he's on the ground, his body twisted at an unnatural angle. There's no dramatic pause, no warning. Just a sudden absence where a living person used to be. Your stomach lurches. This is not like illness. This is not slow or distant. This is immediate, brutal, final. The noise builds into something overwhelming. Rifles crack in rapid succession. Artillery roars, each explosion sending dirt and debris into the air. Shouts and screams blend together, forming a constant, disorienting backdrop. You try to focus on your own actions. Load, aim, fire, reload, again and again. It becomes a rhythm, a desperate attempt to hold onto some sense of control in a situation that offers none. But the battlefield doesn't allow for neat patterns. Smoke thickens, making it hard to see more than a few yards ahead. Shapes move through it, some familiar, others not. You can't always tell who is who. The line you started with begins to lose its shape, breaking into fragments as men move, fall, or retreat. Time loses meaning. Minutes stretch into something longer, heavier. It feels like you've been here forever, even though it might only be a short while. At some point, the order comes to advance again, and this time it's closer. Too close. You move forward, your legs heavy, your mind struggling to keep up. The ground changes beneath your feet. It's softer now, uneven in a different way. You look down briefly and immediately wish you hadn't. The field is no longer just earth. It's something else now, something you can't fully process. You force your gaze forward, your breathing shallow. Every instinct is screaming at you to stop, to turn back, to escape this place. But the momentum of the line carries you on. Then through the smoke, you see them, the opposing line, not as distant figures, not as abstract enemies, but as people. Faces, movements, expressions. Some look just as terrified as you feel. Others are shouting, their voices lost in the chaos. For a brief, strange moment, everything feels still, and then the distance closes. The sounds become sharper, louder, more immediate. There's no space left for hesitation now, no room for doubt. Everything compresses into a series of rapid, overwhelming moments. You act without thinking, because thinking would break you. And somewhere in the middle of it all, you realize something that will stay with you long after the noise fades, if you survive at all. There is no glory here, no honor in the way stories describe it. Only confusion, only fear, only the desperate, instinctive struggle to make it through one more moment. And as the battle rages on, swallowing everything in its path, you begin to understand that the misery of this life isn't just in the hunger or the sickness or the exhaustion. It's here, in this chaos, in this endless storm of sound and smoke and loss. And it's far from over. The line doesn't hold. At some point, though you couldn't say exactly when the structure you once relied on dissolves completely. Orders still exist, shouted somewhere behind you, or carried by officers trying to impose control. But they no longer reach everyone. The battlefield has its own logic now, chaotic and unforgiving, and you are caught inside it. Men begin to drift apart. Some surge forward, driven by momentum or fear. Others hesitate, ducking instinctively as bullets slice through the air. A few turn back entirely, their faces pale, eyes wide with something beyond simple fear, something closer to disbelief, as if their minds can no longer accept what's happening around them. You don't blame them, because part of you wants to do the same. The smoke thickens even more, clinging low to the ground, turning everything into shifting shadows and half-seen movements. You hear footsteps that don't belong to anyone you recognize. Voices shout in tones you can't quite place. The distinction between friend and enemy blurs, not out of philosophy, but because you physically cannot tell the difference anymore. Your rifle feels heavier now. Each reload takes more effort. Your fingers are slick, whether from sweat or something else. You're not entirely sure. You stop looking down. There's a ringing in your ears, constant and dull, as if the world has been wrapped in a thick layer of sound. Individual noises still break through: the crack of a rifle, the scream of a wounded man, the thunder of artillery, but they all feel distant, disconnected. You move forward because the men around you are moving forward. That's all it takes now. Not courage, not conviction, just movement. Suddenly, someone crashes into you from the side. You stagger, nearly losing your footing. For a brief moment, panic surges until you realize it's one of your own. His face is twisted in pain, his arm hanging uselessly at his side. Blood soaks through his sleeve, dark and spreading. He says something, but you can't hear it clearly. Maybe he's asking for help. Maybe he's just crying out. You don't know what to do. You hesitate just for a second, but it feels longer. Long enough for guilt to settle in before you've even made a decision. Another man grabs him, pulling him back, away from the advancing line. You move on, because stopping feels impossible, because stopping might mean never starting again. The ground dips slightly ahead, forming a shallow depression. You and several others instinctively drop into it, seeking whatever minimal cover it offers. The earth here is torn apart, churned into a rough, uneven mess. It smells stronger now, gunpowder, dirt, and something metallic that clings to the back of your throat. You crouch low, trying to make yourself smaller. Your breathing is ragged. Too fast, too loud. You try to slow it, but your body won't listen. Another volley of shots cracks overhead, close enough that you feel the air shift. Dirt sprays into the depression, small fragments striking your face and hands. You flinch, ducking lower, your heart hammering against your ribs. This is survival now, nothing more. The idea of winning or losing feels distant, almost meaningless compared to the immediate need to stay alive. An officer appears at the edge of the depression, his voice cutting through the noise with surprising clarity. He's shouting for you to move, to push forward, to keep the line advancing. His uniform is dirt-streaked, his expression tight, but there's a determination there that feels almost unreal given everything around you. For a moment, no one moves. Then slowly, reluctantly, the men begin to rise. You follow, because that's what you've been doing all along. Following. The advance this time is shorter, more frantic. The distance between you and the enemy has shrunk to something almost unimaginable. You can see faces clearly now, fear, anger, desperation mirrored back at you from men who look no different than those beside you. There's a strange, disorienting realization in that. They're not monsters. They're not faceless. They're just men, like you. The next moments blur together in a way that feels almost dreamlike, except there is nothing gentle about it. Movements become faster, more instinctive. There's no time to think, no space for hesitation. Everything happens at once. Shouts, impacts, the sharp jolt of your rifle firing again and again. At some point, you lose track of how many times you've reloaded. At some point, you stop counting. A figure rushes toward you through the smoke, sudden and unexpected. Your body reacts before your mind can catch up. You raise your rifle, fire. The recoil jolts you back. The figure stumbles, then disappears into the haze. You don't know if they fell. You don't check. Because you can't. Because if you do, something inside you might shift in a way that can't be undone. The noise reaches a peak so loud, so overwhelming, that it almost becomes a kind of silence. Your ears ring harder now, drowning out details, leaving only a constant, oppressive roar. And then, gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, things begin to change. The intensity eases. Not completely, not cleanly, but enough that you notice. The firing becomes less constant, more scattered. The shouts lose some of their urgency, shifting from commands to something else: calls, checks, confusion. The smoke still hangs in the air, but it begins to thin in places, revealing more of what lies beneath. You stand there, your rifle still in your hands, your body tense, waiting for the next surge. But it doesn't come. Instead, there's a strange pause, a fragile, uncertain quiet that settles over the field. You don't trust it. No one does. Men remain where they are, glancing around, trying to understand what's happening. Some take cautious steps forward. Others stay rooted in place, as if afraid that any movement might shatter the moment and bring the chaos crashing back. Your breathing is still heavy, your chest rising and falling too quickly. Your hands tremble, the adrenaline still coursing through you with nowhere to go. And then, slowly, reality begins to settle in. The smoke clears, just enough for you to see. Not everything, but enough. Shapes on the ground that don't move. Equipment scattered where it fell. Men sitting or lying where they landed. Some clutching wounds, others eerily still. The battlefield, moments ago a storm of motion and sound, now feels like something else entirely. Something quieter, something heavier. You take a step forward, then another, each movement hesitant. The ground feels different now, not just uneven, but weighted with something you don't want to fully acknowledge. Voices carry across the field, softer now. Calls for medics. Names shouted into the open air, hopping for an answer that may or may not come. Some answers never do. You lower your rifle slightly, your grip loosening for the first time since this began. Your shoulders ache, your arms feel weak, and a deep, bone-level exhaustion starts to creep in, replacing the sharp edge of adrenaline. It's over, at least for now, but as you stand there, looking out over what remains, you realize something that settles heavily in your chest. The misery hasn't ended. It's only changed shape, because what comes after this is something you were never prepared for. The quiet doesn't feel like peace. It feels fragile, temporary, like something that could shatter at any moment. You stand there longer than you realize, your body still braced for danger, your mind waiting for the next command, the next surge of noise. But none comes. The battlefield remains still, if still is even the right word for a place filled with low groans, distant calls, and the slow movement of those who are still able to move. Your ears begin to adjust first. The ringing fades just enough for individual sounds to separate themselves again. A man crying out for water. Another repeating a name over and over, softer each time. Somewhere off to your right, someone is praying, the words trembling but steady. You swallow hard. Your throat is dry again, but not from thirst this time, from something else. An order comes, not shouted this time, but passed more quietly. Help the wounded, gather the fallen, hold position. Simple words, heavy meaning. You take a step forward, then another, your boots pressing into the uneven ground. Each movement feels slower now, more deliberate. There's no rush anymore, no immediate threat pushing you onward, just the weight of what needs to be done. The first man you approach is lying on his back, staring up at the sky. For a brief moment, you think he might be resting. His face is calm, almost peaceful in a way that feels out of place here. But he doesn't move, doesn't blink. You hesitate, then kneel beside him, unsure of what you're even supposed to do. You've never been taught how to handle this part. No drills prepared you for it. You reach out, your hand hovering for a second before lightly touching his shoulder. Nothing. The realization settles in quietly. You pull your hand back. There's no ceremony here. No time for it. You move on because you have to, because there are others who might still need help. A few steps away, another soldier lies curled on his side, his breathing shallow and uneven. His uniform is torn, darkened where blood has soaked through. His eyes flicker toward you as you approach, unfocused at first, then locking onto your face with sudden intensity. Water, the word, is barely more than a whisper. You fumble with your canteen, your hands clumsy again, unscrewing the cap with more difficulty than it should take. You tilt it carefully, helping him take a small sip. He coughs, sputtering slightly, but manages to swallow. Easy, you murmur, though you're not sure if he can even hear you. You don't know his name. He doesn't know yours. But in this moment, that doesn't seem to matter. He grips your sleeve weakly, as if afraid you might disappear if he lets go. His fingers are cold, too cold. You stay there for a moment, longer than necessary, because leaving feels wrong. But staying won't change the outcome. Eventually, his grip loosens. Not suddenly, just slowly. You don't wait to see the exact moment. You can't. You gently pull your sleeve free and stand, your legs feeling heavier than before. Each step away feels like something being left behind, something you won't be able to fully recover. Around you, others are doing the same, helping where they can, avoiding what they can't. Some work in silence, their faces blank, movements mechanical. Others speak softly, offering what little comfort they're able. A few move quickly, almost urgently, as if speed might somehow outrun the reality of what they're seeing. But there's no outrunning this. The battlefield reveals itself piece by piece as the smoke continues to clear. Scattered equipment, broken formations, And bodies, so many bodies. It's not something your mind can process all at once. It comes in fragments. A hand here, a face there, a uniform you recognize, lying in a position that doesn't make sense. You start to recognize people, not all at once, not clearly, but enough. A man you shared a meal with days ago, another who marched beside you that very morning. Their absence feels louder than any gunfire. You find yourself looking away often, your gaze drifting to the horizon, to anything that isn't directly in front of you. But there's no escaping it entirely. It surrounds you, woven into every step, every breath. Time stretches again, though differently now. There's no urgency pushing it forward, but it doesn't stand still either. It just moves, slow and steady, carrying you through something you don't fully understand. At some point, stretchers arrive, crude, improvised in many cases, blankets tied to poles, doors removed from hinges, anything that can carry weight. You help lift one man, then another. Each movement requires care. Each step feels important. There's a strange gentleness in it, a stark contrast to the violence that came before. You begin to notice the medics more clearly now, moving quickly but with purpose, their hands steady in ways yours are. They don't have the luxury of hesitation. There are too many to help, too little time. You watch as one of them works on a man with a wound you can't quite bring yourself to look at directly. The medic's expression is focused, almost distant, as if he's learned to separate himself from what he's doing just enough to keep going. You wonder if that's something you'll have to learn too, or if it's something that happens, whether you want it to or not. The sun has shifted in the sky by the time you finally pause. You don't remember deciding to stop. Your body simply does. You stand there, your hands empty for the first time in what feels like hours. Your rifle hangs loosely at your side. Your shoulders sag, the tension draining out of them all at once. You feel tired, not the kind of tired that sleep fixes. Something deeper, heavier. Around you, the work continues, but it feels more distant now, like you've stepped slightly outside of it. The sounds are still there, but muted. The movement continues, but slower. Your mind drifts, unbidden, to the morning, to the camp, to the small, miserable routines that once felt like the worst part of this life. The hardtack, the damp ground, the constant coughing. It almost seems distant now, almost manageable, and that realization settles into you with a quiet, unsettling weight, because it means something has changed. Something inside you has shifted. The misery hasn't gone away. It's just evolved. You look down at your hands. They don't feel like yours anymore. Not entirely. There's a numbness there, not physical, but something else. A distance between you and what you've done, what you've seen. You're not sure if that's a good thing, or the beginning of something worse. As the sun continues its slow descent, casting longer shadows across the field. Another order begins to circulate. Prepare to move, not into battle this time, but away from it. The wounded will be taken back. The rest of you will follow. There's no celebration, no sense of victory, just a quiet, collective exhaustion. You take one last look at the field, not out of choice, but because your eyes seem to linger there on their own. And then you turn, because staying isn't an option, because it never is. But as you begin to walk, falling back into line with the others, you carry something with you that wasn't there before. Not just memories, not just images, something heavier, something that doesn't fade as quickly as the smoke. And as the distance between you and the battlefield slowly grows, you realize with a kind of quiet certainty, this is only the beginning of what this war will take from you. And there is so much more still to come. The march back is slower. No one says much. The same road that carried you toward the battle now leads you away from it. But it doesn't feel like the same road anymore. The dust still rises beneath your boots. The trees still stand in the distance. The evening sky still fades from gold to gray. Yet everything seems altered somehow, as if the world itself has shifted while you weren't paying attention. The wounded move with you where they can. Some walk with help, leaning heavily on the shoulders of friends. Others are carried in wagons or on makeshift stretchers that creak and sway with every step. The sounds of the march are different now, less orderly, more uneven. There are quiet groans, muted cries, the low rumble of wagon wheels dragging through dirt. No songs, no jokes, no conversations drifting lazily through the line. Just silence. Not complete silence, of course. War never really gives you that. But the kind of silence that comes when men have seen too much and no longer know what to say. You walk with your rifle resting against your shoulder, though it feels heavier than it ever did before. Your body aches in ways you didn't notice during the battle. Your legs feel weak. Your back burns. There's a stiffness in your neck from hours of tension, from constantly looking, listening, waiting. And beneath all of that, there is a deeper exhaustion settling into you, the kind that doesn't belong to the body alone. The camp comes into view just as the last light begins to disappear. At first glance, it looks almost unchanged. The same rows of tents, the same scattered fires, the same muddy ground and worn-out supplies. But it isn't unchanged, because there are gaps now, empty places where men should be, a blanket laid out near a fire, but no one sitting beside it, a canteen hanging from a post, untouched, a spot in the line where someone used to march. You notice these things immediately. Everyone does. No one speaks about them. The wounded are taken first, guided toward a section of camp that has been hastily turned into a hospital. If you expected something clean or orderly, that idea disappears the moment you get close. The smell reaches you before anything else. Blood, Sweat, dirty bandages, the sharp sting of alcohol. It all mixes together into something overpowering, something that clings to the air and settles in the back of your throat. The hospital itself is little more than a large tent, crowded far beyond what it was meant for. Men lie side by side on blankets, on cots, on the bare ground. There is barely enough room to move between them. Some are silent, too silent. Others cry out constantly, their voices raw and strained. Doctors and assistants move through the chaos with exhausted faces and sleeves rolled up. Their hands are stained dark. Their eyes look hollow, as though they stopped feeling surprise a long time ago. You help carry a wounded man inside. He's conscious at first, though barely. His face is pale beneath the dirt and sweat, his lips dry and cracked. He keeps mumbling something under his breath. Maybe a name, maybe a prayer. You lower him carefully onto the ground because there is nowhere else left to put him. A doctor kneels beside him almost immediately, gives him the quickest glance imaginable, then points toward another corner of the tent. Take him there. That's all. No explanation. No reassurance. Just a direction. You obey because everyone obeys. But as you move deeper into the tent, you begin to see things you wish you hadn't. A pile of bloodied bandages in one corner. A row of men waiting their turn, though for what, you don't know. And near the back of the tent, a stack of boots, not paired neatly beside beds, just stacked, as if whoever wore them no longer needed them. You stop staring after a moment because you have to. Because if you let yourself look too long, you might not be able to look away. Outside, darkness settles fully over the camp. Fires flicker weakly, throwing long shadows across the ground. The usual routines return in a strange, distorted way. Men gather near the fires, eat what little they have, clean their rifles, sit in silence. You do the same. Someone hands you a piece of hardtack and a strip of salted meat. Earlier that morning, it would have seemed miserable. Now you barely notice the taste. You sit near the edge of the firelight, staring down at the food in your hands. Around you, the other soldiers look different somehow. Not older exactly, but changed. There is a heaviness in the way they move, a slowness. One man sits with his head lowered, turning a button over and over between his fingers. Another stares into the flames so intently it's as though he expects to find answers there. Finally, someone speaks. Did you see what happened to Thomas? The words hang in the air. No one answers right away. Eventually, another man nods once. Quietly, he was right beside me. That's all he says. No one asks for more, because everyone already understands. The conversation fades after that. Not because there's nothing to say, but because there's too much. Too many names. Too many memories already beginning to settle into the spaces between one breath and the next. Later, As the camp grows quieter, you find yourself lying awake again. The same thin blanket, the same cold ground, the same distant coughing from somewhere in the darkness. But sleep doesn't come. Every time you close your eyes, the battle returns. The smoke, the noise, the faces. You keep seeing the man who reached for your sleeve. You keep hearing that weak, desperate request for water. You wonder if he survived. You wonder if it matters that you never learned his name. Nearby, someone else is awake too. You can tell by the sound of shifting blankets, by the occasional sharp breath taken too quickly. No one talks about it. No one says they can't sleep, but many of you can't. The night stretches on endlessly. At some point, rain begins to fall, soft at first, then harder. You pull the blanket tighter around yourself, though it doesn't help much. The ground beneath you slowly turns damp again. Water drips through parts of the tent overhead. Somewhere nearby, a man swears quietly under his breath. Another starts coughing harder than before. By morning, the camp will be mud. Everything will be wet. The misery will begin again, in all its familiar forms. Cold clothes, ruined boots, spoiled food, aching bones. And still, somehow, the war will expect more from you, because there is no rest here. Not real rest, only brief pauses between one hardship and the next, as the rain continues to fall and the darkness presses in around the camp. You finally realize something that no one told you when you first became a soldier. The battle doesn't end when the shooting stops. It follows you into the camp, into the night, into your dreams. And before long, you will be asked to do it all over again. Morning comes, but it doesn't feel like a new beginning. It feels like a continuation of something that never truly stopped. The rain has turned the entire camp into thick, clinging mud. Every step makes a slow, sucking sound as boots struggle to lift from the ground. Tents sag under the weight of collected water, some partially collapsed, others leaking steadily. Blankets are damp. Clothes are damp. Even the air feels damp, heavy with the lingering scent of wet earth and something far less natural. You push yourself up from the ground, your body protesting immediately. Your muscles are stiff from the cold and the long march, your joints aching as if you've aged years overnight. There's no time to ease into the day. There never is. Around you, the others rise in much the same way, slowly, reluctantly, as if every movement requires effort. No one looks well rested. No one ever does. The fires from the night before have mostly died out, leaving behind smoldering patches that struggle to produce any real warmth. A few men try to revive them, crouching low, shielding small flames from the damp air. It's a losing battle. Breakfast is worse than usual. The hardtack is softer now, not from freshness, but from moisture, making it somehow both easier to bite and more unpleasant to eat. The salted meat is tougher, its edges curling slightly. its taste stronger than before. You chew slowly, not because you want to, but because your body demands it. You need the energy, even if the food barely provides it. Nearby, a man suddenly retches, turning away from the group. No one reacts much. It's too common to draw attention anymore. Illness moves quietly through the camp, just as dangerous as any enemy line. You take a sip from your canteen, hesitating slightly before you do. You know the water isn't clean. You know it might make things worse. But thirst doesn't wait for better options. From the hospital tent, the sounds carry farther in the morning air. Clearer, more defined. You hadn't realized how much the noise blended into the background during the night. Now, with everything else quieter, it stands out in a way that's impossible to ignore. Low groans, sharp cries, voices calling for help that doesn't always come in time. You try not to listen. You fail. An order is given for roll call. The men gather slowly, forming loose lines that lack the precision they once had. An officer moves down the row, calling out names. Each one hangs in the air for a moment, waiting for an answer. Some are answered immediately, others after a pause, and some not at all. The silence that follows those names is heavier than anything else. No explanation is needed. The officer doesn't linger. He marks something down and moves on. The process continues, methodical and unfeeling. It has to be. There are too many names. When it's over, the line breaks apart without a word. No one comments on the missing. No one asks questions they already know the answers to. Instead, the day's work begins again, cleaning weapons that are already worn, repairing gear that barely holds together, trying to restore some sense of order to a life that resists it at every turn. You're assigned to help near the hospital, not inside, at least not yet, just outside, carrying water, moving supplies, doing whatever is needed. At first, it feels like a small relief, until you realize what it actually means. You spend the morning walking back and forth between the tent and the water source, each trip slower than the last as the mud clings harder to your boots. The buckets feel heavier with every step. Your arms ache. Your shoulders burn. But none of that compares to what you see each time you pass the entrance. The tent flap shifts constantly as people move in and out. And every time it opens, you catch glimpses, too brief to fully understand, too clear to forget. At one point, a man is carried out on a stretcher, his face covered. The cloth is thin enough that you can still see the outline beneath it. The men carrying him don't speak. They don't need to. They walk past you, disappearing into another part of the camp. You watch them go longer than you should, until someone calls your name and pulls you back into motion. Later, you're told to bring water inside. You hesitate, only for a second, but it's enough to notice. The inside of the tent is worse in daylight. Everything is clearer now. more defined. Rows of men stretch out in every direction, some barely moving, others shifting restlessly, caught somewhere between pain and exhaustion. The air is thick, difficult to breathe, carrying a mix of smells that make your stomach tighten. You focus on your task. Move forward. Don't look too closely. Don't stop. You kneel beside one man, helping him drink. His hands shake so badly that you have to steady the canteen yourself. Another reaches out as you pass, his fingers brushing against your sleeve, his eyes pleading. You want to help everyone. You can't. There isn't enough time. There isn't enough of anything. A doctor moves past you quickly, barely acknowledging your presence. His hands are stained, his expression distant. He's already onto the next patient before you've even stood up. You begin to understand something. This place runs on necessity, not compassion. Not because the people here lack it, but because they can't afford it. By the time you leave the tent, the outside air feels almost shocking against your face, even though it's still heavy and damp. You take a deep breath, then another, trying to clear your lungs, your head, your thoughts. It doesn't work. Nothing clears completely anymore. The rest of the day passes in a blur of small tasks and quiet exhaustion. There are no dramatic moments, no sudden changes, just the steady grind of survival. As evening approaches again, the sky darkens in the same slow, inevitable way. Fires are lit once more, their light flickering against tired faces. Food is distributed. Conversations remain minimal. You sit in your usual place, your movements slower than they were even the day before. Across from you, a man begins writing a letter. His hand moves carefully, deliberately, as if each word requires thought. You watch him for a moment, then look away. You haven't written one. You're not sure you can. What would you even say? That you're tired, that you're afraid, that the world you knew feels further away with each passing day. None of it seems like enough. None of it seems right. Night settles in again, bringing with it the same cold, the same discomfort, the same restless quiet. You lie down, pulling the damp blanket around yourself, your body already bracing for another sleepless stretch. Somewhere in the distance, a familiar sound echoes faintly. Artillery, far away, but not far enough. You close your eyes, and even before sleep comes, if it comes at all, you already know what tomorrow will bring. More marching, more hunger, more sickness, and sooner or later, more battle, because this isn't a single moment of misery. It's a cycle, one that keeps turning, no matter how much it takes from you. The next day doesn't bring battle, not yet, and somehow that almost makes it worse, because without the chaos to consume your attention, you're left alone with everything else, the weight, the memories, the slow grind of a life that doesn't ease up just because the guns have fallen silent for a while. Orders come early, not to march into combat, but to move camp. Again, there's a quiet frustration in the way the men react. No one protests. No one refuses. But the energy is different now, heavier, slower, as if each task requires more effort than it should. You begin packing what little you have. It doesn't take long. There isn't much to gather. A blanket, still damp from the rain. A few personal items, worn and faded. Your rifle, always your rifle. Everything you own fits into a space smaller than you ever imagined possible. And yet, even that feels like too much to carry. The camp breaks apart piece by piece. Tents are taken down, supplies gathered, fires left to die out. The place that felt so permanent just hours ago now looks temporary again, as if it was never meant to last. Because it was, nothing here is. The wounded who can be moved are prepared first. Wagons are loaded carefully, though carefully only goes so far when the roads ahead are rough and the journey uncertain. Some men will remain behind, left in the care of whoever can stay with them. You try not to think about what that means. The column forms slowly, less organized than before. The spaces between men are wider, the lines less defined. You take your place without being told, because by now you know where you belong. The march begins. The ground hasn't recovered from the rain. Each step pulls at your boots, the mud resisting you like it doesn't want to let go. The wagons struggle the most, their wheels sinking deep, requiring multiple men to push and pull just to keep them moving. Progress is slow, painfully slow. The sun climbs higher, but it offers little comfort. The dampness lingers, clinging to your clothes, your skin. Every movement feels heavier because of it. No one talks much. There are occasional murmurs, brief exchanges, but nothing that lasts. Most men keep their eyes forward, focused on the ground ahead, as if looking anywhere else might break whatever fragile concentration they're holding onto. After a while, the sounds of the camp fade behind you, replaced by something else. Nature at first, birds distant and cautious, wind moving through trees. For a brief moment, it almost feels normal. Almost. But then you notice something. The silence between those sounds. It feels different. Too still. Too empty. You glance around, and you see that others have noticed it too. There's a tension that begins to build again. Subtle, but unmistakable. Not the immediate fear of battle, but something quieter. Uncertainty, the kind that creeps in slowly. Hours pass, or maybe it just feels like hours. Time stretches strangely during these marches. The repetition of steps, the constant movement, the lack of change. It all blends together into something that's hard to measure. At some point, the column halts. The stop is sudden, uneven. Those in the front pause first, the rest following in a ripple that moves backward through the line. You come to a stop without knowing why. No one explains it. Not right away. Men shift their weight, adjusting their packs, wiping sweat from their faces. Some take the opportunity to sit, even if only for a moment. You remain standing, listening, waiting. That tension from before tightens, just slightly, and then faintly you hear it. Not artillery this time, not the distant thunder of guns. Something else. Hoofbeats, soft at first, then clearer, approaching from somewhere ahead. The reaction is immediate. Not panic, but readiness. Men straighten. Hands move toward rifles. Conversations stop entirely. The sound grows louder, until finally a small group of riders comes into view. Scouts. Their horses are lathered with sweat, their movements quick and purposeful. They don't slow down as they pass through the line, heading straight for the officers at the front. You can't hear what's said, but you don't need to. You can see it in the way the officers react. The shift in posture, the quick exchange of glances, the immediate issuing of new orders. The column doesn't move forward again. Instead, it begins to change direction. The realization spreads slowly at first, then all at once. This isn't just another march. Something is happening. Something close. The line reforms, tighter now, more deliberate. The casual spacing disappears. Commands are sharper, more urgent. You feel it again. That familiar weight in your chest. The one that never fully goes away. The one that's been waiting for this moment. You adjust your grip on your rifle, your fingers tightening around the worn wood. Your mouth is dry again. Your heartbeat begins to pick up, steady and insistent. No one says it out loud, but everyone knows whatever lies ahead is not going to be easy. The column moves once more, but the pace has changed. It's faster now, more focused. The slow, dragging exhaustion of the earlier march gives way to something else, a kind of forced urgency. The land ahead begins to shift, slight rises, scattered trees, uneven ground that makes movement more difficult. Visibility decreases. The open space gives way to something more enclosed, more uncertain. You don't like it. None of you do. Because this kind of terrain hides things, hides movement, hides danger. The sounds return gradually, faint at first, then clearer, not as loud as before. Not yet, but unmistakable. Rifle fire, somewhere ahead. The column slows again, then stops. Orders ripple back quickly this time. Form lines. Prepare. The waiting returns, but it feels different now. Shorter, tighter, like a breath being held. You take your position, falling into line with the others. The familiarity of the movement doesn't make it easier. If anything, it makes it worse, because now you know exactly what's coming. You don't have the illusion anymore. You don't have the distance. You've seen it, felt it, survived it, and now you're about to step into it again. The first shot cracks somewhere in the distance, then another, closer. You close your eyes for just a second, just long enough to feel your breath, to steady your hands, and then you open them again, because there's no stopping this, because there's no turning back, because this cycle, this endless, grinding misery, is pulling you forward once more. And this time, you know exactly how bad it can get. The first shots don't come in a steady line this time. They come scattered, uneven, like something is testing the edges of the silence, rather than breaking it all at once. You stand in formation, your rifle held a little tighter than before, your eyes fixed ahead, even though there's almost nothing clear to see. The terrain swallows distance, trees, uneven ground, patches of brush that shift in the wind just enough to make you question what's real. Another crack, closer now. A branch splinters somewhere to your left, the sound sharp enough to make several men flinch at once. Hold, someone shouts. The word travels down the line, repeated by voices that sound strained but controlled. You don't move, not forward, not back. Just wait. Waiting feels worse this time. In the open field before, at least you could see what was coming. Smoke, lines, movement. Here, everything is hidden. Every shadow could be something. Every silence feels like a trap. Your breathing slows, not because you're calm, but because your body is trying to make itself smaller, quieter. Another shot rings out, then two more in quick succession. A man several paces ahead jerks suddenly, dropping to one knee before collapsing fully. There's no dramatic cry, no warning, just a sudden absence again. You don't look directly at him, but you all know, the order finally comes. Advance. It's quieter than before, but no less absolute. The line moves forward cautiously, this time, not in the steady, exposed march of an open field, but in short, uncertain steps. Your boots crunch over twigs and soft earth, each sound feeling too loud, too noticeable. You try to place your feet more carefully. It doesn't help much. The forest, or what passes for one here, feels alive in the worst way. Not with movement, but with the possibility of it. You can't see far ahead. You can't see far to either side. The men around you become your only reference points, and even they seem less certain now, more tense, more aware. The shots come again, closer still. This time they're answered. Rifles crack from your line, the sound sharp and immediate, echoing strangely between the trees. Smoke blooms in small bursts, drifting quickly in the still air, mixing with the natural haze of the undergrowth. You raise your rifle, aim toward where you think the shots came from. Fire. The recoil feels familiar now. Too familiar. You reload quickly, your fingers moving with a practiced urgency that no longer feels foreign. There's less fumbling this time, less hesitation. That might be the most unsettling part. You're getting used to this. The exchange continues, uneven and chaotic. There's no clear line of battle, no obvious formation. Just scattered groups of men firing at shapes they can barely see, reacting to sounds, flashes, movement that may or may not be what they think. Someone to your right shouts that he sees them. Another fires in that direction immediately. You follow, not because you're sure, but because doing nothing feels worse. The noise builds, though not to the overwhelming level of the previous battle. This is different, more contained, more unpredictable, more personal. At one point, you catch a glimpse, just a flicker of movement ahead. A figure darting between trees, low and fast. You fire instinctively, the shot echoing louder than it should. The figure disappears. You don't know if you hit anything. You don't know if it was even what you thought it was. Time stretches again, but in a tighter way. Each second feels packed, dense with possibility. There's no room for your mind to wander, no space for reflection. Just reaction, just survival. The ground slopes slightly downward, forcing you to adjust your footing. The mud hasn't fully dried here either, making each step uncertain. You nearly slip once, catching yourself at the last second, your heart jumping in response. A hand grabs your shoulder briefly, steadying you. You glance back, a familiar face, or at least it was familiar before all of this. Now it's drawn tight, eyes wide, jaw clenched. He nods once. You nod back. No words. There's no need. The firing begins to concentrate ahead, the scattered shots turning into something more focused. The officers pick up on it quickly, shouting new orders, directing the line to shift slightly, to press toward a particular area. You move with them, because that's what you do, because thinking about it too much would slow you down. The trees thin just enough to reveal a shallow ridge ahead. It's not much, but it's enough to create a natural position, one side slightly elevated, offering a clearer line of sight. And someone is using it. Shots ring out from that direction, more consistent now, more deliberate. The advantage is obvious. You feel it immediately. Exposed, vulnerable. The order comes to push forward, to take the position. It sounds simple. It never is. You advance, your steps quicker now despite the terrain, despite the risk. The line tightens, men drawing closer together without being told, as if proximity alone might offer some kind of protection. The shots intensify. Closer, sharper. You hear the impact of bullets hitting earth, trees. Sometimes something else. A man beside you stumbles, then keeps moving, his face set in a way that tells you not to ask. You don't. You keep going, up the slight incline, your legs burning now, your breath coming faster. The distance feels longer than it should, stretched by tension, by fear, by the constant awareness that every step could be the one that ends it. You fire again, not even fully aiming this time, just responding to the flashes, the movement, the noise. The ridge draws closer, and then suddenly, it breaks. Not cleanly, not all at once, but enough. The firing from ahead falters, becomes less steady, more scattered. The pressure eases just slightly, enough for you to notice, enough for hope to flicker, brief and uncertain. You reach the base of the ridge, then begin to climb. The ground is rough here, uneven, forcing you to use your hands at times. Your rifle slung awkwardly as you pull yourself upward. At the top, the view opens just enough to see what was hidden before. Positions hastily abandoned. Signs of movement retreating into the distance. The immediate threat pulling away. You don't chase. No one does. Because no one is told to. Because no one has the energy. You stand there, breathing hard, your body still tense, waiting for the next command. But it doesn't come right away. Instead, there's that familiar shift again. From chaos to something quieter. You lower your rifle slightly, your arms aching from the effort of holding it for so long. Around you, the others do the same, their movements slower now, the urgency draining out of them. Another fight, another moment survived. But as you stand there on that small rise, looking out over the trees and the ground you just crossed, you don't feel relief the way you might have once expected. You feel something else, a growing awareness that these smaller fights, these sudden clashes, these moments that come and go without warning are just as draining, just as relentless as the larger battles. Maybe more so, because there's no build-up, no clear beginning, just constant tension, constant readiness, constant exhaustion. And as you wipe the sweat and dirt from your face, trying to steady your breathing once again, one thought settles in quietly, firmly. There is no safe moment here. Not really. Only brief pauses before it all begins again. You don't stay on the ridge for long. Whatever advantage it offered has already served its purpose. And now it's just another exposed piece of ground. Orders come down to pull back slightly, to regroup, to reorganize what little structure still remains. The movement feels automatic. Step back, reform, count who's still there. The line gathers itself in a loose, uneven shape. Officers move through the ranks again, quieter this time, speaking in shorter bursts, their voices worn down from repetition and strain. You catch fragments of instructions, pieces of plans that don't fully come together in your mind. It doesn't matter. You'll follow when the time comes. For now, you stand and wait. The forest feels different after the fight. Not calmer, not safer, just emptied of something. The tension that filled it moments ago has shifted, leaving behind a strange stillness that feels almost unnatural. You can hear more now. Leaves moving in the wind. Distant birds returning cautiously. The soft shuffle of boots as men adjust their footing. And beneath it all, breathing, heavy, uneven breathing from every direction, your own included. You realize your hands are shaking again. Not violently, Not enough for anyone else to notice, but enough for you. Enough to remind you that whatever control you thought you had during the fight was never complete. You tighten your grip on the rifle until the shaking lessens. It doesn't stop entirely. Nothing ever does. A man nearby sits down without being told, his legs giving out more than choosing to rest. He stares at the ground, unmoving, his rifle lying across his lap. Another soldier nudges him lightly, says something too quiet to hear. The man nods, but doesn't stand. No one forces him. Not yet. The officers are focused elsewhere, trying to piece together what just happened, trying to anticipate what might come next. You can see it in the way they look out toward the trees, toward the direction the enemy disappeared. They don't trust the quiet. Neither do you. A small group is sent forward cautiously, not to engage, but to watch. To make sure the retreat is real. To make sure this isn't just another pause before something worse. You're not part of that group, and you're grateful, even if you wouldn't admit it out loud. Instead, you remain where you are, caught in that uncomfortable space between action and inaction. Your body wants to move, to do something, anything, but there's nothing to do. So your mind begins to wander, and that's when it becomes difficult again, because without the noise, without the immediate danger, the thoughts come back, clearer, sharper. You think about the man who fell earlier, the one you didn't look at. You think about how easy it's become not to look, not to see fully. You wonder what that means. You wonder if it's necessary, or if it's something you'll regret later, if there is a later. A shout pulls you back. The forward group returns, moving quickly, but not in panic. That's enough to tell you something. If there were immediate danger, they'd be running, shouting warnings, breaking whatever fragile order still exists. They're not. They speak with the officers, quick and quiet. You can't hear the words, but you can see the result. A slight loosening, not relaxation, just less tension. For now, the order comes to move again, but not into battle, not toward the retreating enemy. Parallel, keeping distance, keeping awareness. It feels like walking alongside a storm you can't see, only sense. The march resumes, slower than before, more cautious. The terrain continues to shift, small rises, dips, clusters of trees that break your line of sight just enough to keep you on edge. Every sound feels important. Every movement draws attention. At one point, a bird bursts from a nearby bush, its sudden flight causing several men to flinch, rifles half raised before they catch themselves. No one laughs. No one even comments, because it could have been something else. And next time, it might be. Hours pass like this, or maybe less. Time doesn't behave normally anymore. Eventually, the ground begins to open up again, the trees thinning until the landscape feels less confined. The visibility improves, though it doesn't bring comfort the way you might expect. Open ground means exposure, but at least you can see. That counts for something. The column halts once more as a new position is chosen, not for attack, but for rest. Temporary, like everything else. Tents won't go up here. There isn't time. Instead, the men settle where they can, dropping packs, lowering rifles, sinking down onto the ground with a collective heaviness that speaks louder than any complaint. You sit slowly, your legs grateful for the break, even if the ground beneath you is still uneven, still uncomfortable. Your body feels different now, not just tired, worn, as if something inside you has been steadily used up without being replaced. You lean forward slightly, resting your elbows on your knees, your rifle balanced across them. Around you, others do the same, each man retreating into his own small space despite the closeness of the group. No one talks, not for a while. The silence stretches, not empty, but full of unspoken things. Eventually, someone takes out a canteen, passes it along. You take a small sip when it reaches you, the water lukewarm, slightly off in taste. It doesn't matter. You pass it on. A man a few feet away begins to clean his rifle, his movements slow but methodical. Another stares off into the distance, his gaze unfocused, as if he's looking at something far beyond what's actually there. You find yourself doing the same, looking, not really seeing. The sun begins its slow descent again, casting long shadows across the ground. The light softens, turning everything a muted shade that feels almost peaceful at a glance. But it's not peace. You know that now. It's just another pause, another space between moments of strain. And as you sit there, your body slowly cooling, your mind drifting in that dangerous way it does when there's nothing immediate to focus on. A realization settles in once more. This life isn't defined by the battles alone. It's everything in between. The waiting, the marching, the exhaustion that never fully leaves. The constant awareness that at any moment, everything can shift again. You close your eyes briefly, just for a second, letting your head dip forward. Not sleeping, just resting, because you can. Because right now, no one is shooting. Because right now, you're still here. And in this life, that's as close to relief as you're going to get. For now, for a little while, nothing happens. And that in itself begins to feel unsettling. You sit there with the others, the fading light stretching shadows longer across the ground, the air cooling just enough to make the dampness in your clothes more noticeable. Your body starts to stiffen again now that it's no longer in motion. The brief rest revealing aches that had been hidden by adrenaline and momentum. No one tells you to get up. No one tells you to sleep. You exist somewhere in between, a strange, suspended state where time feels slow, but never truly stops. Nearby, someone finally speaks. Not loudly, not to the group, just to the man beside him. Think they'll come back? The question lingers in the air. It's simple, but it carries everything behind it. The other man doesn't answer right away. He shifts slightly, adjusting the way he's sitting, his eyes still fixed somewhere out ahead. "They always do," he says eventually. No certainty, no fear, just a quiet kind of acceptance. The conversation ends there because there's nothing else to add. You glance around, taking in the faces near you. They're familiar now, in the way that comes from shared hardship rather than friendship. You know the shape of them, the way they move, the small habits they've developed, but you don't know much else. Names come and go. Stories are rarely told, because every time someone disappears, it's one less story to carry. So people stop sharing them. It's easier that way. Safer. The sky darkens fully, the last traces of daylight slipping away, until the world is lit only by faint starlight and the occasional flicker of a distant fire. There's no proper camp this time, no organized setup, just men lying where they are, too tired to care about comfort, too used to discomfort for it to matter much anymore. You shift slightly, lowering yourself onto the ground, your blanket pulled loosely around you. It's still damp, still cold, but your body accepts it without much resistance. Sleep doesn't come immediately. It rarely does. Your mind drifts again, slower this time, heavier. The thoughts don't rush in all at once. They come in pieces. The hospital tent, the man gripping your sleeve, the ridge, the scattered shots in the trees. Each memory feels closer than it should, more recent, more real. You turn slightly, trying to find a position that doesn't press against the worst of the soreness in your body. It doesn't help much. Nothing really does. Somewhere in the darkness, a man begins to snore softly. Another coughs. That same deep, persistent cough you've been hearing since the first day. Life continues. Even here, especially here, you close your eyes, and this time sleep comes, but it isn't restful. It never is. You're back on the field again, though not exactly as it was. Things are different in small, unsettling ways. The smoke is thicker. The sounds are distorted. Faces appear and disappear too quickly to recognize, yet you feel like you know them. You try to move, but your legs feel heavy, slower than they should be. The rifle in your hands doesn't feel right. Too light or too heavy. You can't tell. A voice calls out to you, but you can't see where it's coming from. You turn, searching, but the world shifts with you, never quite settling. And then you wake. Suddenly, your heart pounding, your breath sharp. For a moment, you don't know where you are. The darkness feels too real, too quiet. Then it settles. The shapes around you resolve into sleeping forms, scattered across the ground. The faint glow of dying embers nearby. The distant outline of trees against the night sky. You're back. Not that it feels much different. You lie there for a while, staring upward, your breathing slowly evening out. Sleep doesn't return easily after that. It lingers just out of reach, leaving you caught in that same uncomfortable space as before, half awake, half aware, waiting for morning. When it finally comes, it arrives without ceremony. No dramatic sunrise, no sense of renewal, just a gradual lightening of the sky, enough to reveal the same worn faces, the same scattered forms rising slowly from the ground. Another day, another stretch of time to endure. Orders come later than usual. That alone feels strange. Men gather in loose clusters, waiting, watching the officers, trying to read something from their movements. There's a quiet tension again, not immediate, not sharp, but present. Always present. When the instructions finally arrive, they're simple. Hold position. For now, no marching, no immediate movement. Just wait. At first, it sounds almost like relief, but you know better. Waiting has its own kind of weight, its own kind of strain, because while you're waiting, your mind has time to wander, to think, to remember, and sometimes that's worse than anything else. You spend the morning in small tasks, checking your gear, cleaning what you can, adjusting things that will never quite feel right. The repetition helps, a little. It gives your hands something to do, even if your thoughts don't follow. Around midday, the sun breaks through the lingering clouds, warming the ground just enough to begin drying the worst of the mud. It should feel like a good thing. It doesn't. Not really. Because comfort feels temporary now. Everything does. A group of men nearby begins talking quietly, their voices low but steady. You catch fragments, home, food, places that feel impossibly far away now. There's a softness in those words, a brief return to something normal. You don't join in. You just listen, because listening is easier, because imagining something better, something distant, feels both comforting and painful at the same time. Eventually, the conversation fades, like everything else does. Nothing lasts long here. Not joy, not relief, not even distraction. As the day stretches on, that same realization settles deeper into you, more firmly than before. This life isn't just hard because of the battles. It's hard because it never lets go. Not for long, not enough. And as you sit there, staring out over the quiet landscape, knowing that somewhere beyond it, something is always moving, always preparing, always waiting, you begin to understand that this cycle, this endless, grinding repetition, is the true weight of it all, and you're only just beginning to feel how heavy it can become. The hold position order doesn't last in the way anyone hopes it will. In this place, even stillness has an expiration date. By late afternoon, the mood shifts again, subtle at first, almost unnoticeable. Officers begin moving more frequently between groups. Riders come and go. Conversations, that are meant to stay quiet still manage to drift through the ranks in fragments. Something is happening. You can feel it before you are told. It's in the way men stop talking mid-sentence, the way hands linger a little longer on rifles, the way eyes keep drifting toward the same distant point, as if expecting something to appear there. Then the order comes, not shouted this time, delivered, measured, prepare to move. No explanation follows. None is needed. The line forms faster now than it did before. There's less confusion in the movement, but not because people understand more, because they've learned not to ask. You tighten your straps, check your rifle, adjust your grip. Everything feels familiar again. Too familiar. The march begins in silence. No music. No encouragement. No attempt to lighten the weight of what's coming. Just boots against earth, steady and tired, carrying men forward, because stopping is no longer part of the choice. The terrain changes gradually. Open ground gives way to uneven stretches again, broken patches of brush, scattered trees, shallow dips in the land that hide more than they reveal. Visibility narrows. The air feels tighter, as if the world itself is closing in. You notice the shift in breathing around you. Not louder, but shallower, controlled. Everyone is listening again, waiting, and then it happens. A distant crack, then another. The line doesn't break this time. It reacts instantly, not chaos experience. Men drop slightly into lower stances, rifles coming up in practiced motion. The sound of commands cuts through the air quickly, sharper than before, more efficient. You move with them, because there's no question anymore. This is it. The first exchange feels almost delayed, like the battlefield is remembering how to speak. Shots echo unevenly across the trees, not yet fully connected, still searching for rhythm. Then it finds it. Rifle fire answers rifle fire. The world tightens again. You advance in short bursts, stopping when others stop, moving when they move. The rhythm is different now, less chaotic than before, but more controlled, more deliberate. That makes it no less exhausting. Maybe more. A man beside you speaks, without looking over. Feels closer this time. You don't respond, because he's right. It is closer. The sound doesn't travel as far before it lands. The gaps between shots are shorter. The flashes ahead are clearer, sharper. Whatever space existed between both sides before is gone now. There's no more distant enemy, only proximity. You fire, reload, fire again. Your hands don't hesitate anymore. They don't need to think about each motion. They just perform it. That realization sits somewhere in the back of your mind, but there's no room to explore it further. Movement ahead increases. Not retreat, not advance. A shift, something unstable. The officers react quickly, adjusting the line, calling out changes in direction. The formation bends slightly, trying to maintain structure in a situation that resists it. You follow, always follow. A sudden burst of movement appears through the trees ahead, figures crossing between gaps, too fast to identify clearly. Shots are exchanged immediately. The sound intensifies again, tighter than before, more concentrated in one area. The line presses forward toward it. Step by step, you feel the incline before you see it. The ground begins to rise, unevenly at first, then more clearly. A ridge forms again, less defined than the last one, but similar enough to trigger instinct. Height, cover, control. Both sides understand it at the same time. The race for it begins without announcement. You move faster now, despite the fatigue. So does everyone else. There's a shared urgency that overrides exhaustion, something deeper than command. The instinct to not be the one left exposed. Gunfire sharpens. Closer, faster. A man ahead stumbles, regains balance, keeps moving. Another drops to a knee, fires blindly, then pushes back up. No one stops for either of them, not because they don't care, because stopping isn't possible anymore. The ridge is reached in fragments, not one side taking it cleanly, but overlapping, colliding. The moment you crest it, the world opens again, just slightly, and everything becomes immediate. Distance disappears. Faces appear. Too close. Too real. There's no time for anything resembling thought. Only reaction. Only movement. Only survival compressed into seconds that feel both too long and too short at the same time. Your rifle comes up, fires. The recoil jolts through you, but you barely register it. Someone moves in your peripheral vision. You pivot, fire again. The smoke thickens almost instantly, rising between bodies, turning everything into shifting silhouettes. Sound becomes layered. Too many shots, too many commands, too many voices overlapping until none of them feel distinct. You lose track of direction. Only forward remains. Then, just as suddenly as it intensified, it fractures, not stops. Fractures. The pressure breaks in pieces. Movement ahead becomes less coordinated. The opposition begins to pull back in uneven waves, not a clean retreat, but something disorganized, reactive. The line doesn't chase immediately. It holds, breathing hard, waiting. The ridge is yours, or what remains of it. You stand there, chest rising and falling rapidly, your arms heavy in a way that feels almost separate from your body. The smoke thins slowly, revealing fragments of the aftermath again. Scattered movement, falling back shapes, silence trying to return, but failing to fully arrive. You don't feel victory, not even close, just the absence of immediate danger, which in this world is the closest thing to peace you get. An officer walks past, voice hoarse but steady. issuing the next set of instructions. Consolidate, reorganize, prepare. Always prepare. You lower your rifle slightly, though your grip doesn't loosen. Your hands don't want to let go yet. Not because you expect more fighting in this exact moment, but because letting go feels wrong. Like the pause might be temporary, like everything always is. Around you, men begin to shift again, some tending to minor wounds, others simply sitting where they dropped, too exhausted to stand without reason. You remain upright, watching, listening, waiting, because even now, even after everything that just happened, one truth stays constant. This war doesn't end in moments. It only pauses, and every pause is just the breath before the next wave comes. The ridge does not stay quiet for long. It never does, even in moments where everything seems to settle. There is always a kind of tension left behind, like the world is holding its breath and simply hasn't decided when to release it again. You stay in position as ordered, though the shape of the line has loosened. Men are scattered across the ridge now, some standing, some crouched, others sitting where their strength gave out. The structure of discipline is still there, but it is fraying at the edges. Everyone is listening, even when there is nothing obvious to hear. The smoke continues to thin, slowly, unevenly. It drifts in long, lazy strands between the trees below, revealing more of the ground than anyone seems comfortable with. What was hidden during the fighting is now visible again, and that visibility changes something in your mind, because now you can see how close everything actually was, how narrow the space was between order and collapse. A man nearby wipes his face with a shaking hand. Dirt smears across his cheek instead of cleaning it. He doesn't notice, or maybe he does, and simply doesn't care enough to correct it. Someone else speaks softly, thought they'd push harder. No one answers, because no one knows what harder even means anymore. There was nothing soft about what just happened, nothing restrained. It already felt like the edge of everything. An officer moves along the ridge, speaking in low tones, checking positions. His voice is quieter than before, but his eyes are sharper. Not because things are safe, but because they are not. He pauses near you briefly, looks past you, then continues without saying anything. That silence says enough. Time passes in a strange way here. Not fast, not slow, just uneven. Minutes stretch, then collapse, then stretch again. You find yourself shifting weight from one foot to the other without realizing it. Your rifle remains in your hands, though you are no longer actively using it. It is simply there now, like part of your body that refuses to detach. A distant sound breaks through the quiet. Not gunfire, something smaller, a single shot, then nothing, then another, far away enough that it doesn't trigger immediate reaction, but close enough that everyone notices. Heads turn slightly, not fully, just enough to acknowledge it. The officers react more clearly now. A brief exchange, a gesture, a decision forming quickly between them. You can feel it before it is spoken. We're not done. The order comes moments later. Advance carefully. No rush. No charge. Just movement. Controlled. Measured. Which somehow feels worse. Because controlled movement means awareness. Awareness means proximity. Proximity means the danger hasn't gone anywhere. It has simply shifted its shape again. The line descends the ridge slowly. Not like before. Not rushing. Each step is deliberate. Each foot placed with caution. The ground below is uneven, scarred by recent movement, littered with signs of what just occurred. You avoid looking directly at too much at once. Your mind has learned that survival sometimes depends on selective attention, but it still sees things anyway. A torn piece of uniform caught on a branch, a dropped cartridge belt half buried in dirt, boot prints overlapping in chaotic patterns that no longer belong to any single direction. You swallow, your throat dry again despite everything you've already drunk today. The forest closes in slightly as you move forward. The ridge behind you disappears from view. Sound changes again, less echo, more absorption. Everything feels closer to your ears now, as if the world has stepped inward. Then the first contact happens again. Not a line, not a formation, a sudden exchange. Shots crack from ahead, sharper now, more precise than before. The response from your side is immediate, but controlled. No full engagement yet, just testing, probing, reacting. You drop slightly, rifle up instinctively. Fire, reload, move. The cycle resumes, but differently this time. It is not the chaotic explosion of earlier engagements, nor the structured clash of the ridge. It is something in between. A shifting, unstable middle ground where neither side fully commits, but neither side withdraws. A kind of war that feels like hesitation, made physical. A man beside you breathes heavily, then speaks without looking. They're still here. You don't respond, because yes, they are still here. That is the only certainty that seems to survive everything. A sudden burst of movement ahead draws attention. Not a full charge, not a retreat, something fragmented. Figures shifting between trees again, but less coordinated now. The fight has lost its clean edges. It is dissolving into pockets, into fragments, into scattered moments of violence, rather than one continuous event. You move with your group through one of these pockets, stepping over uneven ground, ducking as shots snap overhead. The forest offers no real cover anymore, only interruptions of sight. At one point, you stop behind a tree without thinking. Your breathing is fast, controlled, but strained. You press your back against the bark for just a second longer than necessary. Not rest, just pause. Then you move again. always forward, always reacting. Another burst of fire erupts nearby, close enough that the sound feels physical, like something striking the air itself. You instinctively shift direction, adjusting with the others. The enemy is no longer a line. It is presence, everywhere, and nowhere fully. You catch a brief glimpse of movement ahead, too fast to identify clearly, but close enough that your body reacts before your mind confirms anything. You fire. The recoil jolts through you again, familiar now in a way that feels unsettling rather than comforting. No confirmation follows, no clarity, just continuation. And then slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, the intensity begins to thin again. Not collapse, not victory, just reduction. Fewer shots, wider gaps between them, less coordination. The forest begins to reclaim sound in small pieces. Wind, distant birds, the soft shifting of men repositioning rather than advancing. The fight is not ending, but it is loosening, breaking apart. You stand in place for a moment, rifle still raised, waiting for the next impact that doesn't come immediately. Your body remains ready, even as your mind starts to register the change. Around you, others do the same, waiting, listening, hopping without admitting it. Then finally, the order comes again. Hold. This time, it carries a different weight. Not temporary pause like before. Not preparation for immediate advance. Just hold. And for the first time since the ridge, you feel something that resembles distance. Not from the enemy, but from the moment itself. As if the world has stepped back just slightly, giving you enough space to recognize how long you've been inside it. You lower your rifle a fraction. Not fully, never fully, because nothing in this place ever guarantees that you won't need it again within seconds. But for now, the cycle pauses, and you are still standing inside it. The hold, order, never feels like safety. It only feels like delay. You stay where you are, scattered across uneven ground with the others. The forest still half alive, with distant sounds that refuse to fully disappear. Every rustle of leaves seems suspicious at first. Every shifting shadow a reminder that the situation hasn't truly resolved. It has only loosened its grip. Men begin to adjust slowly, not relaxing, just settling into the uncertainty. Some sit, some remain standing. A few pace in short, restless patterns that don't lead anywhere. The wounded are fewer now in your immediate area, but their presence still echoes through the space. Quiet groans, hurried movement when someone is carried past. The occasional shouted instruction from a medic somewhere deeper in the line. You keep your rifle in your hands, not raised, not lowered, just there, a constant weight that your body has stopped questioning. The air feels different now. Not lighter, exactly, but less compressed. The pressure that had been building through the earlier exchanges has loosened, leaving behind a strange emptiness that almost feels worse than tension, because emptiness gives room for thought, and thought is not kind here. A man nearby sits down fully this time, leaning back against a tree. He exhales slowly, like he's been holding his breath for hours without realizing it. His eyes stay open, unfocused, fixed on something that isn't in front of him. Another soldier checks his ammunition again, even though he already did it moments ago. The motion repeats without purpose, like habit refusing to stop even when it's no longer needed. You notice your own hands are still slightly tense, fingers curled around the rifle, even when there is nothing immediate to fire at. You force them to loosen a little. Not much, just enough to feel the strain in a different way. Time passes without announcement. No one calls it out. No one marks it. It simply moves forward in its uneven way, dragging everyone with it, whether they are ready or not. Then, from somewhere deeper in the forest ahead, a sound breaks through. Not a shot, not movement, a voice, too distant to understand clearly, but human enough to shift attention instantly. Heads lift across the line. Conversations stop mid-breath. Even those who were half resting straighten slightly. The forest responds differently to voices than to gunfire. Voices mean uncertainty. Gunfire means pattern. Uncertainty is harder to ignore. An officer moves quickly through the space, exchanging words with another. Their tone is low, but urgent. You can't hear what's being said, but you can see the shape of it forming. Something has changed again. Always something. You feel it before it's announced. The enemy isn't gone. The hold is not stable. The order comes shortly after. Not advance, not retreat, reposition. The word carries a different kind of exhaustion with it. Not the exhaustion of action, but the exhaustion of adjustment, of being forced to reshape everything again and again without ever fully settling. The line begins to shift, slowly at first, then more decisively. You fall into movement without needing instruction now. The rhythm of following has become automatic. You adjust your position, step over uneven ground, keep pace with the others as the formation bends and reforms in a new direction. The forest thickens slightly as you move. Branches close in. Visibility narrows again. The sense of openness you briefly had disappears, replaced by that familiar, enclosed feeling, like the world is tightening around you once more. A distant crack echoes again. Single, then another. The reaction is immediate, but restrained. No full engagement yet, but everyone is alert again. The hold has already shifted into something more fragile. You can feel the cycle restarting. Not fully, not loudly, but unmistakably. A man ahead raises his hand briefly, signaling something you can't interpret, and the line adjusts again. Your group angles slightly left, moving toward a subtle rise in the terrain. Nothing dramatic, just enough elevation to matter. As you move, your boots press into softer ground. The soil here feels different, less compact, more recently disturbed. You don't focus on it for long, but your mind registers it anyway. Signs of movement, recent passage. You tighten your grip slightly again without thinking. The rise comes into view slowly. Not a ridge like before, but a gradual incline, dotted with trees that break sightlines at irregular intervals. It offers partial advantage, partial exposure. The kind of place neither side wants to fully commit to unless necessary. But necessity doesn't ask permission here. The first shot from this area hits closer than the earlier ones. Not loud, not dramatic, just closer. That is enough. Your line reacts again, returning fire in controlled bursts. The sound builds, but doesn't explode like before. This is more contained, more focused, a smaller version of the same machinery. You move with it. Step, fire, reload. Step, the rhythm returns, but differently now. Tighter, more cautious, less chaotic, but more mentally draining in a strange way. There is no full collapse into confusion, no overwhelming storm to hide inside. Everything is just persistent. A man beside you speaks briefly again, feels like it won't end. You glance at him. He isn't looking at you. He's watching the trees ahead. You don't respond because you agree, but agreement doesn't change anything. The advance resumes up the incline. Slowly, carefully, the opposition ahead is less visible now, more embedded in the terrain. Shots come from multiple points rather than one direction. No clear front, no clear edge, just presence again, everywhere and nowhere fully defined. You climb with the others. You're breathing heavier now from the effort, your muscles straining again after the brief pause. The earlier exhaustion hasn't left. It has simply been layered under new strain. That's how it works. Nothing resets. It only stacks. At the top of the incline, the line pauses briefly without command. Not because of safety, but because the terrain forces it. The ground levels slightly, giving a momentary break in movement. You take it without thinking. Your chest rises and falls steadily, sweat mixing with dust on your skin. You glance forward through the gaps between trees. Movement, faint, uncertain, then gone. No confirmation, just enough to keep the tension alive. And in that moment, standing at yet another uncertain point in, yet another shifting phase of this endless cycle, you realize something that feels heavier than the fighting itself. There is no after that arrives cleanly, no clear point where everything stops and becomes something else. Only transitions, only changes in intensity, only the same misery reshaping itself into new forms, again and again, without ever truly ending. The forest stays quiet for a second longer. Then, somewhere ahead. A shot cracks, and everything begins again. The crack of the shot doesn't just restart the moment, it fractures the illusion that anything had settled at all. For a brief second after it echoes through the trees, everything feels suspended. Not quiet, not safe, just paused in that fragile space where no one is yet certain what comes next. Then reality snaps back into motion. Rifles rise almost in unison. You move with them, not thinking, just reacting. The incline becomes active again in an instant. Shots return from multiple angles, sharper now, more concentrated than before. The forest no longer feels like terrain. It feels like concealment being actively used against you. You drop slightly behind a tree as instinct takes over, your shoulder pressing against rough bark. Your breathing is controlled, but tight. Your chest rising faster than you want it to. Fire, reload, shift. The rhythm returns, but it is no longer smooth. It breaks and reforms constantly, interrupted by movement, by visibility, by the unpredictable nature of what is unfolding ahead. Someone further up the line shouts something you can't fully hear. The word is swallowed by the overlapping sound of rifles and movement. Whatever it was, it changes nothing you can immediately see. The fight is no longer a single shape. It is fragments again, scattered contact points across uneven ground. You step forward with the others, leaving cover briefly, then ducking again as shots cut through the space you just occupied. Each movement feels shorter now, more cautious, as if everyone has learned just how thin the line is between safe and exposed. A man near you stumbles as dirt explodes beside his boots. He recovers quickly, but doesn't look down. No one does. Looking too long at anything right now slows you down, and slowing down is dangerous. The incline levels out more fully now, transitioning into a broken stretch of ground where trees are spaced unevenly. Sightlines open and close in unpredictable patterns. One moment you see movement ahead clearly, the next, it vanishes behind foliage or smoke. Your awareness narrows, not because you choose it, because there is too much to process. Another burst of fire comes from your left. You pivot instinctively, firing in response. There is no confirmation, no feedback, just the continuation of motion. The world does not reward accuracy here, only participation. A voice calls out behind you, urgent, clipped, pushy. The word spreads quickly, not as an explanation, as direction. The line surges forward again, not fast, but decisively enough to shift the pressure. The terrain ahead becomes slightly more open for a stretch, and that openness is immediately contested. You move with the surge, your legs carrying you uphill over uneven ground. Your rifle remains ready, but your focus splits constantly between movement and the shifting shapes ahead. Then abruptly, something changes. The intensity ahead does not increase. It breaks, not like earlier collapses, not a full retreat or clear withdrawal, but a disruption. The pattern of fire becomes inconsistent, then sparse, then fragmented into isolated shots that don't connect into anything coherent. You notice it before it is confirmed. So do the others. The advance slows, then hesitates, then holds, not because of an order, because the situation itself forces it. The forest ahead feels suddenly emptier in a way that is difficult to trust. Movement still exists, but it is no longer coordinated. Whatever structure was there is dissolving in real time. You keep your rifle raised, scanning between gaps in the trees, waiting for something to reassemble itself. It doesn't. Instead, the sounds continue to thin, not vanish. Thin, a distant shot, then silence, then another, even farther. The tension in your chest does not release. It simply changes shape. Your body remains ready, but the immediate pressure begins to recede in uneven waves. An officer moves forward cautiously, then signals. The gesture is restrained, uncertain, but it carries meaning. Hold. Again. But this time, it feels different. Not like waiting for something inevitable. More like trying to confirm something already in motion. You step into a small clearing with the others. The ground here less obstructed, more visible. The air feels slightly more open, though the sense of danger has not left. It has just dispersed. Men begin to spread out carefully, securing the area in a loose pattern. No one relaxes fully. There is no permission for that yet. You lower your rifle slightly, but not completely. Your arms ache from the repeated cycles of tension and release. Your body feels like it has forgotten what true rest is supposed to be. A few soldiers begin speaking in low tones again, but the conversations are different now. Less speculation, more observation. Short remarks about what they saw, what they think is happening, what might come next. You listen without engaging, because your mind is still catching up, still processing the shift. The realization comes gradually, not as a single thought, but as a slow accumulation of evidence. The enemy line is no longer holding, not fully, not cleanly. What remains ahead is disorganized resistance, isolated groups, or fatting positions, rather than a unified force. The structure that defined the earlier engagement has collapsed into fragments, but even that realization does not bring relief, because fragmented danger is unpredictable danger, and unpredictability is its own kind of exhaustion. The light begins to shift again overhead. The day is moving forward, whether you feel it or not. Shadows stretch longer between the trees, and the temperature begins its slow decline. Somewhere deeper in the line, a call goes out, something about consolidation, about securing forward positions, about preparing for further movement if needed. The words are familiar. Always preparing, never finishing. You tighten your grip on your rifle again without thinking. Then force yourself to loosen it slightly once more. The cycle of readiness has become automatic now, embedded in your body as much as your mind. Around you, men settle into temporary positions again, forming loose clusters where they can see and be seen. The forest remains quiet in uneven patches, broken only by distant, sporadic sounds that no longer form a coherent pattern. You look ahead one more time through the trees. No clear movement, no defined enemy line, just distance and uncertainty. And as you stand there in yet another temporary pause, surrounded by men who are just as exhausted, just as alert, just as uncertain as you are, one thing becomes increasingly clear. This war does not move in moments anymore. It moves in fragments, and you are learning, step by step, how to survive inside every single one of them. The fragments don't settle into peace. They only rearrange themselves. After what feels like another long stretch of uncertain holding, the order finally shifts again, subtle at first, then undeniable. Not a charge, not a withdrawal. Something in between that has become almost routine by now. Forward elements, the command passes down the line. Probe and secure. No one asks what secure means anymore. It always means the same thing. You move, not as a mass this time, but in a looser formation. Smaller groups pushing ahead through uneven ground, testing what remains of the resistance. The forest feels thinner here, but not safer. If anything, the openness makes every sound sharper, every movement more exposed. Your group advances cautiously, rifles ready, eyes scanning constantly. The earlier chaos has faded into something quieter, but that quiet is deceptive. It is not absence, it is distance. Whatever remains of the opposition is no longer concentrated in front of you. It is scattered, unpredictable, hidden in pockets you cannot fully map. A shot cracks somewhere ahead, then nothing. No immediate response follows. Your group pauses instinctively, bodies lowering slightly without instruction. You wait for confirmation, another volley, a return exchange, something to define direction. It doesn't come. Instead, there's only stillness again, uneasy stillness. You push forward a few more steps, carefully placing your feet, your boots pressing into soft ground that gives slightly with each movement. The terrain here is uneven in a different way, less about obstacles, more about uncertainty. Another man from your group gestures ahead. Quiet, controlled, indicating movement. You follow, always follow. As you round a cluster of trees, the scene ahead opens slightly, and immediately your attention tightens. There are no clear lines, no organized formations, just scattered remnants of movement, retreating figures disappearing between trees at irregular intervals. Not a coordinated withdrawal, something looser, more fractured, like pieces breaking apart and failing to recombine. Your group does not immediately fire. Not yet, because even now, the situation refuses to fully define itself. Then someone ahead does fire. Single shot, then another follows. That is enough. The air breaks again into controlled violence. You raise your rifle, aiming through gaps in the trees where movement was last seen. The recoil comes familiar now, almost dull in its repetition. You reload without thinking about it, your hands performing motions they no longer need instruction for. The engagement this time is shorter, less intense, more scattered. Each exchange feels like a brief interruption rather than a sustained battle. Fire. Pause. Reposition. Fire again. No full collapse into chaos. No overwhelming surge. Just persistent, uneven contact that refuses to fully resolve. A man near you speaks briefly, almost under his breath. They're pulling back. You hear it, but don't respond, because you can see it too. Not clearly, but enough. The pattern is breaking, not abruptly, not decisively, but steadily. The opposition is no longer holding space. They are abandoning it in pieces, leaving behind uncertainty rather than structure. Your group advances again, more confidently this time, though still carefully. The forest opens slightly, revealing more ground ahead. The sounds of gunfire become less frequent, more distant. At one point, you step over something you don't look at for long. Your eyes register it briefly, then move on. That habit is no longer a choice. It is instinct. The advance continues in this fractured rhythm until the terrain begins to flatten again. The density of trees decreases. Visibility increases. The sense of being enclosed begins to fade, and with it, the immediate pressure. Not gone, but reduced. A slow shift rather than a clear ending. Your group halts near a broader stretch of ground where movement is harder to conceal. No one speaks loudly. Orders are passed quietly, adjustments made in small clusters. You lower your rifle slightly again, though your grip remains firm. Your arms ache in a way that feels deeper now, not just fatigue from exertion, but accumulation from everything before it. A long accumulation. Behind you, other groups begin to converge, filling in the space gradually. The fragmented advance is becoming something more unified again, though not in the same structured way as before, more like gathering after dispersal. The sky above is shifting toward late afternoon. The light is softer now, angled differently through the thinning trees. Shadows stretch longer across the ground, and the air feels cooler against your skin. For a brief moment, there is no immediate firing, no visible movement ahead, just the sound of breathing, of distant footsteps, of a world slowly trying to reassert itself in the gaps between violence. You stand still for a moment longer than usual, letting your body remain upright even though it wants to settle. Your mind is still alert, still scanning, still waiting for the next disruption that may or may not come. But nothing immediate arrives. Instead, what you feel is something else. Not relief, not victory, just a widening space between events. A space that feels unfamiliar because it is not defined by urgency. An officer moves past, giving quiet instructions for consolidation and continued observation. The words are calm, but not relaxed. There is no assumption that this is over, only a recognition that the shape of it has changed again. You adjust your position slightly, shifting your weight, scanning the area ahead once more. No clear enemy presence remains in sight. Only distance, only terrain, only the fading echoes of what just happened. And as you stand there, rifle still in hand, surrounded by men who are slowly realizing the same thing in their own ways, a quiet truth settles in without ceremony. The fight has not ended, but it has moved, and wherever it moves next, you will move with it, because that is what this life has become. Not battles, not moments, but constant relocation through the remains of conflict, step by step, fragment by fragment, until there is nothing left to recognize except the motion itself. The end does not arrive the way you once imagined it might. There is no final explosion, no clear announcement, no moment where everything simply stops and the world agrees that it is over. Instead, it comes like everything else in this war has come, gradually, unevenly, through exhaustion rather than conclusion. After the last movement forward, the line is ordered to halt once more. Not for battle, not for pursuit, just stop, hold, observe. The words are the same ones you've heard before, but they carry a different emptiness now, as if even the officers are no longer fully certain what they are holding for. You stand with the others in a wide, open stretch of ground where the forest has finally thinned away. The terrain is quieter here, less enclosed. The sky feels larger again, though it does not bring comfort. There is no more immediate gunfire, no more sudden breaks in the air, only distant echoes now, so far away they feel disconnected from you entirely. Like another place, another life, men begin to realize it slowly, not all at once, not with celebration, but in small, quiet shifts, a loosening of posture, a lowering of rifles, the first tentative conversations that aren't about movement or danger. Someone laughs once brief, almost accidental, and then stops, as if unsure whether it was allowed. No one tells him to stop. No one joins in either. You remain still for a long time. Your rifle is still in your hands, but it no longer feels like something you are actively using, more like something you forgot to put down. Your grip relaxes without instruction. Your shoulders drop slightly, and for the first time in what feels like an entire lifetime, the absence of urgency does not feel like a trap, just absence. The officers move through the line, speaking in lower tones than before. Their expressions are tired in a different way now, not the sharp focus of command under pressure, but the worn-out dullness of something finally reaching its limit. Orders are given, not to advance, not to hold, but to regroup, to consolidate the line fully, to account for everyone. That last part lingers longer than the rest. You understand it immediately. This is not just a tactical pause. It is an accounting. One by one, names are called again. Not in the rigid formation of earlier roll calls, but more loosely now, more uncertainly. Voices respond where they can. Silence answers where they cannot. Each silence lasts a little longer than it should. No one comments on it anymore, because there is nothing left to say about it. You hear your own name eventually. You answer. Your voice feels strange when it comes out hoarse, distant, like it belongs to someone else. It is marked. You are still here. That is enough. Around you, the process continues until it slows, then stops entirely. The remaining structure is confirmed. What is left of the line is gathered, reorganized not into perfection, but into something that simply still exists. There is no victory speech, no celebration, just movement away from the place you've been fighting in. The march back begins. This time, it feels different from all the others, not because it is easier, but because it no longer feels like preparation for something worse immediately ahead. The distance you travel is the same. The weight you carry is the same. The exhaustion in your body does not change, but something inside, the rhythm has shifted. The war is still present behind you. Not gone, not forgotten, but no longer pressing directly against every step. As you walk, the landscape changes again, trees becoming less broken, paths becoming more defined, signs of organized movement returning in faint, familiar ways. The world feels slowly less fractured. You don't speak much, neither does anyone else, but the silence is different now. It is not the silence of waiting for impact. It is the silence of something that has already happened and cannot be undone. Camp eventually appears in the distance. Not the same one, not exactly, but similar enough to feel like a return to something known. Tents, fires, movement that is not chaotic but structured. People who are not actively trying to kill or avoid being killed. You stop for a moment when you reach it. Just a moment, looking at it, not as relief, not as joy, but as confirmation that you are still part of something that continues beyond the ridge, beyond the trees, beyond the endless fragments of violence. You step forward again, inside, and nothing dramatic happens when you do. No collapse, no realization, no sudden emotional release, just continuation. The same life, in a quieter form. Days will still come. Orders will still be given. Marches will still happen. But something fundamental has shifted now, not in the world around you, but in how it presses against you. It no longer feels endless in the same way, not because it has ended, but because you have seen its shape fully now, all its phases, all its cycles: hunger, exhaustion, waiting, violence, silence, repeat. And somewhere inside that repetition, you realize something that settles into you without drama, without clarity, without relief. You survived it, not cleanly, not untouched, but still standing. And for a soldier in this war, that is the closest thing to an ending that ever truly exists. The camp continues around you as night begins to fall again. Fires are lit, orders are given. Men sit, eat, sleep, speak in low voices about things that feel far away, even though they happened only hours ago. You find a place among them. You sit down. Your rifle rests beside you. And for the first time since this began, you are not waiting for the next immediate burst of gunfire. You are just here, alive, exhausted, changed, and the war, for now, is somewhere else. Not gone, but distant enough to let you breathe. The misery never truly disappears, but it no longer defines every second. And that is how it ends. Not with silence, not with victory, but with the slow, imperfect return of ordinary time, and you still inside it,